are you this afternoon, this evening?
Fine, thank you.
I'm just going to do a quick sound check. And we are at the Children's Coalition Incorporated. What is your name?
Charlotte Rebillard.
Okay, today's date is July 25th, 2011. We're at the Children's Coalition Incorporated. The name of the person being interviewed is?
Charlotte Rebillard.
Thank you. When is your birthday, Charlotte?
August 14th.
And your current address?
4968 Alder Drive, Unit B as in boy, West Palm Beach, Florida.
And my name is Carlton Cartwright. I am doing the interview and shooting the video. And I am the CEO and founder and executive director for the Children's Coalition Incorporated. Okay. Charlotte, what wars, if any, did you serve in?
I served during the Vietnam era.
And what branch of service were you in?
I was in the Air Force.
What was your highest rank?
Senior Airman.
And tell me all the places that you served.
My basic training was in San Antonio, Texas. And then my tech school was in San Angelo, Texas. My first assignment was at Chelenco Air Station in Taipei, Taiwan. And then I finished up at San Vito Air Station, San Vito, Italy. And then I went to McGuire Air Force Base where I was discharged.
Do you remember how long you were at each of those places? What year did you go in?
1974. I went in June of 1974. And I got out in January of 1978. At San Vito Air Station, I was there 18 months. At Chelenco, I was there 15 months. And I believe I was 6 weeks at San Antonio for basic, but I was in a whole status for a few weeks. And then from there, I believe August, I believe from August until like January of the following year, 75, I was at San Angelo Air Force Base. That was for my tech school.
Okay. What did you go to tech school for?
I was a Morse code intercept operator, a 20752.
Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I enlisted. Women were not drafted back in that era.
Okay. Are they drafted now?
No one's drafted now that I'm aware of.
Has a woman ever been drafted?
As a matter of fact, when I was discharged from the military, because at that point women did not have equality as the guys did in the military, I did not have a retention like the guys did. I believe the guys for like 2 years, I think they had where they could be called up for duty, but women were not.
Okay. Where were you living at the time you enlisted?
I started originally in Columbus, Ohio, and then I transferred to Torrington, Connecticut, and then from there I went to Keesler, Biloxi, Mississippi, and my actual destination, or where I finally entered the military, was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Okay. Where were you born?
I was born in Connecticut, in Torrington, Connecticut.
Okay.
And I went in on the delayed enlistment.
Why did you join?
Back then I was married and my ex-husband was in the military. So I figured I'd join the military. We could work together, travel together, go to school together.
Okay. And I guess that sort of answers was he in the Air Force also?
Yes.
So that's why you picked that service branch.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Do you recall your first days in service? What was that like?
Well, it wasn't for me all that difficult because having been around people who are already in the military, I knew what to expect. I knew what to do, how to do it, how to get by. And, back then I could spit shine shoes and You know, I knew how to clean a tube of toothpaste so nothing showed above the rim and all that, and stuff we didn't have to do, but I knew how to do it, and you know, so I was all prepared. And besides, I was older than most of the girls who were in at the time.
So, well, what was boot camp leading? What did boot camp training? What did it consist of?
We had.
Do you remember your instructors and?
Yes. One, her last name was Price, and the other, I believe, was Schoonmaker. And we had old barracks buildings where we had 2 to a room and air conditioning. And we had a main room where we would meet, like for mail call and meetings and stuff. We had 2 floors to our build. Well, 2 floors where we had the barracks, and then we had a basement where we did our laundry and ironing. And we had 2 wings. We had like a north and a south, and then first floor and second floor. And you know, we learned how to put all our uniforms, you know, spaced, I believe was 2 fingers apart. All the blouses, all the skirts, things of that nature. Where you put all your other items. I remember how we learned to like fold our clothes. One of the things going back then was even how to take pantyhose, take it, fold it, roll it, and keep it so it was flush and even. So, and then you took the rest of your clothes and stuck them in your laundry bag. So you didn't have to, you know, mess around with the other stuff unless you needed to.
Okay. All right.
And then we had a board where we put under the bed from one end to the other, you know, the long ways that we'd put our shoes there and line them up. And that way they were all, you know, perfectly in line.
Where was your basic training?
My basic training was in San Antonio, Texas.
Lackland?
Lackland Air Force Base, yes.
And where did you go for your MOS?
My tech school was in San Angelo, Texas, at Goodfellow Air Force Base.
What was that? How many weeks? How many weeks was the basic training then?
Basic training, I believe, was 6 weeks.
Okay.
And then I was in a hold status because they weren't ready to ship us out to the new base. Mm-hmm. And so I was in like a temporary status for several weeks. And then from there they bused us to San Angelo. And that lasted, I believe, from like August until the following January, I believe. So it was something like 4, 5, 6 months, I think, total from when it started to end. And I think it was somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay. And how was that? How was that whole period?
Well, there wasn't much of a problem. We didn't have to do any marching or anything because the base was so small that by the time you lined up, you were at the other end of the base. So we were able to, you know, walk to the class, or if we had a car, if we wanted to drive from one block to the other, we could do that as well. Mm-hmm. And you could walk from one end of the base to the other. It was very small, so. And tech school was not difficult. You had to have good hearing so you could, you know, hear the Morse code, and then you learn what the letters stood for, and then you'd sit and copy it, and then after you learned the letters, then you could make words, and then we also learned, being that I was 207X2, that means that I also learned of the copy and where I would be able to hear the signals on an oscilloscope, and then you could put that information onto reel-to-reel and copy it that way. Then I wouldn't have to sit and copy it.
Okay.
It could be recorded.
So when you got done with your tech school, where'd you go?
My first assignment was at Chelinko Air Station, Taipei, Taiwan.
What do you remember? What it was? You remember arriving there when you arrived, and what that was like?
Well, I flew from, well, I was, I believe, in Connecticut. I flew to California. Mm-hmm. California.
Where? North or south?
I believe it was, I think they sent us to San Francisco. I don't actually remember which city, but They bused us to the base. From there, they flew us to Alaska, Alaska to Okinawa, and then Okinawa to Taipei, Taiwan. And we went civilian. We did not fly military.
Oh, the whole trip.
Yeah, the only time I flew in any type of a military plane was when I went TDY. Other than that, it was all civilian.
Is that World Airlines?
I don't remember. No.
Okay, so what was it like when you got there? What was your job assignment?
Well, we did shift work, and so I was assigned to a shift, and we had several different kind of jobs you could do as an X2, but primarily I would sit and again listen to the find a signal on an oscilloscope that we use, and you just turn the you wore headsets, the big old headsets that covered both ears and practically your head. And then you just kind of play around with the dial on the oscilloscope until you found the signal, and then you could sit and copy it or transfer it to the reel-to-reel tape, and then just tape it. So, and that's pretty much what I did, doing shift work for 15 months there.
Okay. Shift work. What do you mean shift work? What do you, second shift, third shift, first shift?
We worked.
Or did it vary?
We varied. We worked 4 swings. From like what was it, like 3 to midnight or something like that. And then we worked 4 mid shifts from midnight to 7, and then 3 days from say 7 to 3 or thereabouts, and then we'd have 3 days off.
Okay.
So it was like 3, 3, 3, and then we'd start again. And we'd have 24 hours off between each shift from when you got off one day to the next.
Right.
I did that both in Taiwan and Italy. We work shift work.
Okay. Did you see any combat?
No, I didn't see any combat. The only thing that I can remember in particular is when we were stationed at Shilinko Air Station. It was at the top of a hill, and around us was the Taiwanese military. And if we were off base for whatever reason, buses brought us in each and every day. They ran back and forth from the hill and the base to the city of Taipei, and seeing the military, the Taiwanese perform their duties and stuff, and the tanks and things of that nature. So that was the only type of combat that I saw that I can recall.
Okay. So you didn't see any casualties or anything like that?
No, we were locations for those who went TDY, both in Taiwan and, or I should say R&R, not TDY, R&R, in both Taiwan and Italy. So we had a lot of, people either being flown in or coming in ships and stuff. But, yeah.
Casualties from?
No, this was just R&R, rest and relaxation. Okay. Now, I did go a couple times when I was in Italy. I went TDY to Wiesbaden, and I remember that in the medical area, I know thank God they were empty at the time, but they had body bags there that they had to send out.
Gotcha.
So, no, I didn't see anything like that.
Okay. So you weren't a prisoner of war.
No.
So you don't have any experiences in captivity. However,
just being in the military.
That's fine. I'm not complaining. Okay. Were you awarded any medals or citations for anything?
The only thing I can think of is like from our the tech school, that they had like the #1 in the class, and we had a very small class, and I ended up being #1, that type of thing. But other than that, no.
Okay. This segment 4 is just about the general life in the military. How did you stay in touch with your family? What was life like being in the service? How did you stay in touch with your family?
Well, unfortunately with the military, they sent my ex-husband to one base and they sent me to another. So unfortunately the Air Force really didn't help to keep us together. Back then, we're talking the 70s, we did not have computers, we did not have cell phones. The pay was a lot less. We had regular U.S. post office, and once in a while, if you were lucky, made a phone call back, home, and that was it. It was few and far between that you talked to your family, got to see them or anything. So it's quite different from it is now, how things are now. We didn't have any of that.
Right. What was the food like?
I was very lucky. I remember, as a matter of fact, when I was in Taiwan, they were the #1 chow hall for the Air Force on that part of the world, in the Far East. The food was wonderful. I remember in particular, too, that on Fridays they had steak and lobster on Fridays. And we had problems that a lot of the dependent wives and stuff would always want to come, and they were allowed to eat, but we had to get our share first. So we had a lot of good food. A lot of good food.
I remember Sundays in Wiesbaden in Germany on the air base.
Mm-hmm.
Steak. No lobster, but steak. All right, did you have plenty of supplies?
As far as I can remember, anything we needed, we always had.
Did you feel any pressure or stress?
Well, there was stress when, initially my joining and wanting to, live and travel and work with my husband. I mean, I was a young girl back then, and, that was quite stressful.
Right.
And then being that, you had so few and far contact with your family back home,
Mm-hmm.
That was stressful too. I can remember, like, when one of my grandfathers passed away, the Red Cross contacted our chief sergeant, and then he was the one who, gave me the news, like, my grandfather died. So, I mean, it was, there was no electronics or anybody to, talk to, or no way really to get back in time for any burials or anything like that. So, yeah, you were kind of on your own. So, that was stress in itself. And the job, the job didn't have a lot of potential for life afterwards, so unfortunately that's exactly what it turned out to be. It was just a job.
Right. How did people entertain themselves? How'd you entertain yourself?
Well, I remember when I was in Taiwan, we had a couple clubs down right in Taipei. So both of them were geared towards the military. One was an airman's club. And they always had entertainment, dancing, stuff like that. I remember USO shows coming to one of the, the other club. And so we'd have an entertainment like that. We'd dance a lot, drink a lot. Yeah, drinking was a big thing.
Okay.
I remember too that if people lived off base, go to somebody's house,
Right.
have a home cooked meal or help cook, play games, things of that nature. Remember stuff like that for entertainment. I know at one point I was going to school and taking classes. And when I was in Taiwan, I had a class that I ended up helping with the Taiwanese American school, and I helped them, the kids, put on a musical. So I helped with the backstage stuff and got college credit for it as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was.
What were you
pretty cool.
majoring in?
Back then it was just an associate degree.
Okay.
So I ended up with an AA and an AS degree ultimately.
Okay. You said USO. Were there any entertainers that came and that you saw?
No big names that I can never remember.
Right.
It was just, you know, a group of people up there, you know, singing that were Americans and, you know.
That was it.
But yeah, so there was no, I don't recall, there was no Bob Hope, there was no Doris Day, Chris Noel, things of that nature, none of that. It was, you know. But it was entertaining, and they were American.
Right. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you went on leave, what did you do? Where did you go?
Well, when I was in Taiwan, I don't recall honestly taking any leave. So, but in Italy, I took leave and I went to Naples.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Rome, and then I went to Paris, France, and Brussels, Belgium, and Vienna. Kind of made a circuit that way, through Frankfurt, Germany, and back. So, Corfu, Italy, went there a few times. That was about it. I mean, we, you know, did local traveling.
Okay.
But you didn't need to take leave for that.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you go home? Did you go back to the States on leave at all?
Only from station to station.
Okay.
Not in between, no.
What did you go see? Where was your husband stationed?
Well, when I was in the Taiwan, he was in the Philippines. So he did come up and visit me once, so I didn't have to take leave for that.
Right.
And by then, when I went to Italy, we were already separated. So I was there by myself, so got to see some of the country. My brother did come and visit when I was in Italy.
Okay.
So he toured with me when we took some time, and yep.
Okay. Tell me all the places. Yeah, maybe you did already. Did you tell me all the places that you traveled while you were in the service? Did you say that in the beginning? Did you leave anything out so far?
Not that I can think of. While I was in the military, it was San Antonio, Texas, San Angelo, Texas, Taipei, Taiwan, and then, you know, the neighboring towns and cities or whatever. And then when I went to Italy, all the traveling I did of, you know, a little bit through Italy itself, and then, as I said, like Paris, France, Brussels, Belgium,
Okay.
Frankfurt, Germany,
Naples, Rome, Corfu.
and Corfu.
You recall any particularly humorous or unusual events?
Well, in Italy, their pizza is not what we were used to in the States. Having a nice big cheese American type pizza, when you went to Italy, they had these small pizzas that about fit on a plate, and they were like the consistency of thick bread, and it took a while to get used to them.
Right.
But once you did, they were okay. So that was one thing that was, you know, quite a... and then I remember when we were traveling, a few of us, when we went like to Paris and France and all that stuff, it was hard to figure out what to eat. So I think we had very limited variety of food, because if you didn't know what you were ordering and couldn't get anybody to communicate with, you got something that you thought you might have, you know, understood on the menu and hoped for the best when you got it.
Right.
And back then too, there was no McDonald's overseas, there was no Burger King or places like that, so, you know, there was no fast food. So it was quite different. But
Okay. Did you or your peers play pranks on each other?
yes. I remember in when we were in basic training, the girl who was my roommate, and I clearly remember her name. Her name was Deborah Gross, Gross. And she was young, and I believe this was her first time away from home. So I knew about how to short sheet a bed, you know, things like hide under the bed, and, you know, she'd go to sleep, or hide in the closet and she'd open the closet, things of that nature. I remember back then too, there was, I think, there was a centerfold in Play Girl. I'd got my hands on it, so I taped up the centerfold in her locker. So when she opened it, not her locker, her closet. So when she opened it, she was quite surprised. Things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool. So, but yeah, things like that.
Did you collect or make a did you have a lot of photos from the military?
I have some. Yeah, places that I went, things I did, a few of the people, and some of them I still have photos of today because I still keep in touch with a couple of them.
Cool.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and I've got a few little knickknacks. I've got like I don't know, maybe a 4-inch Eiffel Tower, and I've got like a hot plate trivet of Taipei, Taiwan. I've been there. I've got a couple cups like when we were in Italy and stuff, that we had ceramic mugs for the flights we were on, like Abel Baker, Charlie dog flight, stuff like that. I've got a couple mugs still left, from the flights and stuff. So, yeah.
What did you think of officers or fellow soldiers? And did you or did you not keep a personal diary?
No, I really didn't keep a personal diary. Officers basically were in their own world. They had different ways, different things to follow, and like as an enlisted person, if you came across an officer, you had to salute them. It was your responsibility to salute them first.
Right.
Things of that nature. So they were people just like us. So I really didn't think much one way or the other of, basically it was the person.
Gotcha.
Either they demanded respect or not, and it didn't matter what rank they were.
All right. The next segment has to do with life after the service. Do you recall the day that your service ended? What year was that?
1978.
That's the year that I went in.
January of 1978.
Where were you?
I was at McGuire Air Force Base.
New Jersey.
And I was supposed to be discharged, and unfortunately they had a snowstorm and closed the state, so I had to wait an extra day to get discharged. And then I was in my dress uniform. They got me to the airport, and thankfully one of the guys who was riding as, I guess, standby a pilot, gave me his seat, and I flew home. At that point I went to Hartford, Connecticut, to Bradley International Airport, and then went home to Torrington, Connecticut.
Okay. I'm curious, but anyway, what was Torrington like, and what did you do in the days and weeks afterwards?
Torrington was a very, very, very small city. And initially I collected unemployment for a few months. And then I moved to Knob Noster, Missouri, which is even smaller than Torrington. Way smaller. And I stayed there for approximately 6 months, and I decided I needed a change from Knob Noster. So I came to...
Why did you go there?
I had a friend living there,
Okay.
and so I thought that might be a good place to move to see how things worked out, and I did not want to stay in Torrington. And so after a few months, I decided I needed to relocate, and my brother was moving to Florida. So the week before Thanksgiving of 1978, I flew to Florida, and I've been here ever since.
Okay. Okay. Did you, so, okay, we know initially you were on unemployment, so eventually, you went to work, did you go back to school? Was your education supported by the GI Bill?
I did go to school. At that point, when I moved down here, I got my associate in arts degree, and then I started working on my bachelor's degree. I did not complete my bachelor's. I needed five courses to get my bachelor's, and they were all in my major. And it was at that point that I realized that I should have, taken the major classes first instead of all the electives. But back then I took what I could get at the time.
Right.
And so I in turn did not complete my bachelor's, but I did use my
GI.
My GI, yes I did.
Okay. Did you make any close friendships while you were in the service?
Yes. As a matter of fact, one of my friends, Amy and I were stationed together both in Taiwan and Italy, and we are still in touch to this day. She lives in Washington, D.C. right now, works at the Pentagon.
Oh. And
then one of my other friends, we lost touch for a few years, and then we touched base again, and he too lives and works up in Washington. And we only were stationed together in Taiwan. And then from Taiwan, I also had made friends with a couple of the Taiwanese ladies, and a couple of them had married service guys, and they still reside in San Antonio, Texas. So I'm still in touch in particular with one of the women.
Right.
And her daughter at the time in Taiwan was a child, and now she is a grown woman, and she has become an attorney. So I once in a while am in contact with her as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Tell us about your involvement in veterans organizations.
I've been active with the Vietnam Veterans of America Chapter 25 for over 25 years. I've been the president, I've been the vice president and the secretary for the chapter for quite a few years. I was also active at the state level. I was the state representative for the chapter, and I was also the state council secretary for several years. And then I was active at the national level out of Washington, D.C., committee member for the women veterans, public affairs, and the homeless veterans. And since then, I'm still active at the chapter level, but no longer active at the state and national level for the Vietnam Veterans of America. Now, Women Veterans of America is a very small national organization. We have one chapter in Florida, and for the last probably 6 years, I've been the chair of that committee. And then I was also at one point someone active with the Air Force Sergeants Association here locally, but they disbanded. And then I'm active right now, last several years, and I'm the chair of the Palm Beach County Veterans Committee, which does the local Veterans Day Parade and then the Memorial Day ceremony at the South Florida National Cemetery. And then I'm also on the volunteers, the VAVS through the VA hospital. I'm on the VAVS committee and the executive committee there. And then I'm also on the Women Veterans Committee at the VA hospital for the last couple of years.
Okay.
You asked.
Quite a list. No, that's admirable. Okay. Segment 6 is later years in closing. So what did you go on to do as a career after the war, after your service?
I always seem to have ended up doing clerical work. I worked for the first several years in various insurance agencies and claims offices. And then 26 and a half years ago, I started with Palm Beach County. And excuse me, the first 9 months I was with Human Resources, and then after that, the rest of the time I've been with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue doing secretarial work,
Okay,
and I'm still doing it.
gotcha.
And when I grow up, I'm not going to be a secretary.
We'll keep an eye on
Okay.
that. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or about the military in general?
I think when the United States goes into war, if they don't go in with the intent to win, lock, stock, and barrel, don't bother.
Gotcha.
And what was the other part of the question?
Did your military experience influence your thinking? Well, you just said how you felt, I guess. About war or about the military in general?
When I was in the military, because I didn't see combat, if you want to put it, I guess we were kind of in a protected type environment,
Right.
because we had to have a top secret clearance. We were in buildings that had no windows. It was a compound with security.
Right.
So we were protected. We weren't out and about. I didn't have to carry a gun. I didn't have to worry about, say, self-defense or, kill or be killed. None of that. I think a lot of my changes occurred after, when I moved to Florida and got involved with the Vietnam veterans of America in particular, where a lot of my friends and all the stuff they've gone through over the years changed a lot of my thinking, opened my eyes to a lot of stuff.
Right.
And then from there, formed various thoughts or whatever. But yeah, if you're not in it to win, don't play the game.
Gotcha. Can you talk to us a little bit about the... All right, if in a veterans organization, sounds like you're in about 5, what kinds of activities does your post or association have?
Oh gosh, we've done all sorts of stuff over the years.
Such as?
What have we done? We've helped, like I know at Sunfest. I
Okay.
remember one year that they did cleanup during and after Sunfest. I remember at the South Florida Science Museum, a couple of years we had Pepsi booths, where we'd pour the sodas and sell that to do as a fundraiser. What else have we done?
Fairgrounds?
Well, we've been at the South Florida Fairgrounds for as many years as I can remember, where we pass out information about veterans and benefits, talk to veterans if they so desire. We had one year the moving wall out at the fairgrounds, and we had to have security 24/7, and it had to be outside the perimeter of the fairgrounds because people are allowed to come there 24/7. So we had people, security, and people to basically work the, if people had questions and needed assistance, I was in charge of the security for the 24/7 and the volunteers to work the wall. So I've done that, and then we also had the wall at one point at the Royal Palm Memorial Gardens. I helped with that. And Chapter 25 was instrumental in helping with a lot of that. We've done things of helping at the homeless shelter with the women veterans.
Right.
Well, some of the women have gone to the with the group, the detention center, to talk with some of the girls and boys there,
Right.
or young men and young women there.
At the Palm Beach Regional Juvenile Detention Center.
We've done stuff like that. We've helped one of the veterans, the women veterans group. We what was $100 that we decided we would give one of the women, so she would go shopping to buy supplies for a needy children's school. Things of that nature we've done. We participate in the local parades, both the Vietnam veterans and the women veterans. So we've been in parades like that, both groups, or together many a time. The women veterans and the Vietnam veterans, we work on projects or different things together, like the South Florida Fair, the Veterans Day parade, things of that nature. When we have our holiday luncheon, both groups these days we have it together. And the last couple years, or last year in particular, we bought what we call regifts. People, gifts that people have given you and you don't really want them, bring them, and we'd have them wrapped, but we'd know what was inside. And then we took them and we donated them, like, to the women's and children's homeless center. We did that last year. Things of that nature we've done.
Excellent. Okay. Do you attend any reunions?
Military reunions?
Yeah.
For a few years I was going to the reunion up at Melbourne at Wickham Park. But unfortunately, with the weather being so hot, because it's usually the end of April, beginning of May, and I've realized after several years that some of the stuff is the same, and some of the people that I see there, I would see at other events, so I don't participate these days like I had. And I'd say maybe reunions of going up to, like, Washington to the Women's Memorial, the Women's Vietnam Memorial. I had participated in several events there for when they had the Women's Vietnam era. I was there for the 1st, 5th, and I think 10th year reunion. The WIMSA, which is the Women's Generic Memorial.
Right.
I've been there for the dedication. I've been to the wall several times when we've had, like, Veteran Day events, stuff like that, where a bunch of us would come in. So I've been to stuff like that. Yep.
All right. Well, in closing, you feel like there's anything that you left out? And I do have one last question to go along with that, and that is, as far as gender is concerned, in the military, what was it really like being a woman during that time period, in the service, in the military, in the Air Force?
Well, women, they say back when I served that it was about 2% of the military were women. The career field that I was in was new to women. It was, just being opened up to them. I knew that women, when they got pregnant, for a while there, were having to get out. They were just starting to accept women to stay in. They had problems, like, with uniforms and things of that nature, because they were still of the mindset that the uniform you had and that you had been issued was what you wear. But when a woman's pregnant, that kind of changes. Physically, that doesn't work. So they were kind of starting to work through that. I was very lucky. With my assignments in particular overseas back then, and you had so few women, and you didn't have a whole lot of, say, even people who were married, so few families stationed with them, that with my being young, and they just loved me. I was very, very lucky that I was treated very well. Many a time that I was referred to as a round eye. Everybody loved to see the round eye, meaning, the shape, because they're like the Oriental girls, have a different, eye design facially, and so a lot of people liked, a white blonde-haired round-eye girl.
Okay.
So I, most of the time I was treated very well.
Okay.
Most of the time.
Okay.
Then there were other times, but most of the time.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you feel like I didn't ask you, or anything else that you'd like to add?
Well, the main thing is I know the military truly changed my life. I had wanted to, go in, as I said, like, to be with my ex-husband, to see the world, travel, get education, have a job and all that. And I got to travel. I got to see the world. Unfortunately, along the way, my ex-husband became my ex-husband. And being in the military truly changes your life, whether you do stuff like that or you're in for a few years, you get out, you go back home or whatever it is, but the military does change who you are. Sometimes just on the inside, and sometimes the inside and the outside, but it does change you.
Okay. I'd like to thank you very much for your time and giving us your history.
Thank you. Da-da-da-da-da. Well, now you know me.